What's up, Dev Tips? It's your boy Travis. We got Max in the room, and we got a pretty good episode for you today. Max, how you feeling this week?
I'm good. I've had a nice long week.
Yeah.
The weather's beautiful. How about you?
Did you catch the eclipse? What was it like where you are?
Well, I could only catch it via the interwebs. Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah, same here.
I think it was only visible from the United States.
Yeah, and only a strip too. I wasn't even in the strip. Like there was it made a little crescent moon as it passed me, and I tried to do like the thing, like where you do this and like look at the wall, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
But I did watch the NASA live stream, and so you caught a live stream too. You said.
I didn't.
What do you?
I didn't watch a live stream. I just caught like videos on the internet about it.
Yeah. Somebody in my work chat posted, and she was like in the critical path, and she was like, I just feel so emotional right now. And I was like, I get it, like, because it's a moment in time where you are, it's kind of like, it's like you're here now, and it's like a very, very specific event. And then also just that it's felt communally with everybody else, like maybe that's super emotional. I'm just hypothesizing. I'm not really sure. But if you guys are watching this video and you saw the eclipse, comment down in the thing if you got like any superpowers or whatever, because that would be dope. Anyway, I got something to share with you, Max, today.
Okay.
It's something I wrote. It's something I wrote a little while ago, and then as I was kind of getting ready for this podcast episode, I kind of edited a little bit. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read it to you, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about it. So I wrote this last year, kind of like when ChatGPT first came out, and I was like talking to ChatGPT like all day long.
Are you alive?
Like I would like.
Do you love me? I love you, ChatGPT.
Yeah, like I would be like cooking dinner, and then I would like leave the hot pan and go like type something,
hey,
and then like leave.
What you thinking about?
What you thinking? So it was like really influential in the way like I was understanding and like processing, some of my thoughts and some of my ideas, and specifically the idea of like this idea of I had rattling around for a book about significance, and kind of this writing was not written with ChatGPT. However, like it's inspired by that kind of like back and forth there. Okay. So anyway, I'll just get started. Yeah. So the title of this writing is called Sensitivity, and it might be an excerpt from a book called The Significance Framework.
It might be an excerpt from a book?
Well, I want to write a book, and I was thinking that, because like the book would be a little bit more like philosophical, like textbook style, but I was thinking like maybe with each section or with each the chapter of the book, I would inject these kind of like narrative driven explanations of the principles. And so like this is like there's a lot of theory in this story, and maybe even a little bit too much for the narrative, but like that's kind of like the context is that this would show up alongside a bunch of definitions and like a bunch of like like hard information rather than narrative driven stories. So but this is like a narrative from that.
Excellent.
Potentially. Yeah. Okay. I'd like you to help me remember something I've forgotten. The old AGC word and clicked to life. It excitedly assembled a response, which formed as a new string of text at the bottom of the screen. Of course. What would you like me to help you remember? The machine hummed with a synthetic warmth, the display crackling with phosphoric light. The next words that appeared on the screen did so much slower. These words were typed by fingers aged with time. Slow was all right. He was past the age of needing everything to be sped up to suit him. Being slow helped him to think clearly, and thinking clearly was simply more fun than being confused and distracted. He was increasingly interested in the experience of thinking over the product of it. Please locate the entry titled About a Boy, a discussion of significance, meaning, artistry, and love. He smirked at the confounding title. He realized that as he typed it in by hand into the chat interface. This was intentional. It was loaded with keywords that would direct the AGC, the automatic general computer, into places of his past where he wanted to revisit. his own faded memories mixed with dusty theories about nature of art and how to talk to children. His text prompt lit the screen, one character at a time, and slowly filled the reply box. It never was a fast process to arrive anywhere of significance, he thought to himself as he typed. He had learned that long ago. Eventually, the request was completed and sent to the AGC. In contrast, the response from the AGC quickly illuminated the viridescent screen. The specific journal entry from the archive, musings mixed with recollections, the record of a real man's memories, his scrape with reality as he saw it. Sure, here's the entry titled About a Boy, a discussion of significance, meaning, artistry, and of love. How's that for an intro?
I like it. Keep going.
I'm so nervous to reading. Okay. My son is the youngest of our two children. Between the four of us, I suspect his perspective can feel as one that exists in a world that is slightly bigger than he feels fit for. There is no way that I can truly know what it's like for him, but I know at least sometimes I feel myself unfit for the scale of the world that I live in. Last night as I was brushing my teeth, I wandered into my son's bedroom. I could immediately sense that something was off. Ducking down into the bunk bed and peering in on my boy, I asked my son why he seemed so upset, which question was met with huffs and grunts. When, after a few prompts, he looked up at me and said with a sad face that marked so clearly a reflection of my own in times past, which betrayed itself as pain crossed with annoyance, "Dad, can you even tell me why you love me?" "Yes, I absolutely can. Let me spit this out and I'll be right back." I ran to the bathroom and spit out my mouthful of toothpaste and quickly grabbed a cushion to sit on. I came into the room, sat on the cushion, and told him to get his fuzzy blanket and allow me to wrap him up like a burrito. This was a playful ritual of ours from when he was very young. Playfully, I would wrap him up in blankets and pretend to eat him like a delicious burrito. I liked to wrestle with the kids, and I suspected that he liked to be wrapped, snuggled, and held. "You have my undivided attention, son," I said to him as I wrapped him up and held him tight. "I'm going to tell you exactly why I love you. I remember the day that you were born. I held you in my arms. You barely fit in one arm, and I tucked you like a football in just there. In you, I could see it immediately. Your sister was there on your grandmother's hip. Standing around, many of your family members were gazing down and clamoring to see you. Your papi, your nana, aunties and uncles excitedly chattering as they gathered around you. The room was warmly lit. I remember the soft orange and red glow of the sun coming through the window, and you were in a little white and yellow blanket. You were as beautiful as the sun on your own. Your little yawn, your big tuft of dark hair. I saw it in you the moment I met you. The same thing that's in your sister. The same reason I love your mother. From birth, you've had it. It's the soul of an artist. Have you ever heard anyone describe you as being sensitive?" I asked, and he nodded, snuggled in his blanket, head in my arms, the tears of a boy looking for meaning welling in his eyes. "This is because you have what it takes. Sensitive people like us are important to society. Sensitive people like us have an opportunity and a responsibility to use our sensitivity in ways that shape our world. People who can do that are artists. It's the job of an artist to hone their sensitivities in such a way to navigate the great display of experience. The artist uses their high sensitivity to gather and interpret the data of experience. Their experience is important because they are willing to use it to teach us all about what it means to exist as a human right now. Through the ages, artists have been the heroes of their people, whose job it is to tell the story of the human experience. This is in effort to help humanity to reflect on and eventually understand itself or parts of itself. You are sensitive, and that is your strength. Your job is to contextualize the things that you sense and be skilled enough to articulate them in a useful tableau for others to understand and to engage with. In this way, You give others a way to contextualize their own experience and understand their own complex emotions, which they may not be sensitive enough yet to appreciate the way that you do. The work of an artist is to understand themselves so deeply that they can articulate the important aspects of their existence in helpful and meaningful ways. At times, this requires an artist to offer the pain of fully living in an experience as a sacrifice. In order to gather the data, they need to articulate the most critical aspects of reality to the rest of us. And this requires deeply sensing their own emotions and reflecting on their own experiences. These sensing abilities must be complemented with understanding. The artist is skilled in interpreting the sense data that they gather. The artist must also make other sacrifices in order to communicate clearly to other people. This can be seen in the time, the energy, and thought put into creating their art, but also in reducing and simplifying the complexity of the data that you understand as an artist. Effectively organizing a tableau requires gathering much more data than is actually represented in the execution of the tableau. In order to simplify, you must interpret. In order to interpret, you must understand. In order to understand, you must gather the information. In order to gather information, you must be able to sense the data available, and this can sometimes be a painful and frightening experience. However, through this act, the artist imprints themselves into their art and they leave their mark. The artist can imbue individual and cultural context, meaning, and significance into the art. And during the moment of connection between the art and the observer, these dynamics blend and multiply and create an understanding and empathy, and they create an opportunity for transcendence. You, son, have the soul of an artist, and that means what's inside of you is the potential to render your experience in a way that others can view and appreciate their own lives. Your job at this point is to acknowledge your role. You must now sharpen your tools enough to cut through the noise of experience to reveal its meaning, first for yourself, and afterwards in helpful ways for others to engage with. The artist's life is meaningful as a way to bring appreciation and context for all experience. Pain and joy are equally useful to the artist. Sorrow and love are equally sweet. Moment to moment, the artist navigates reality and experience with the ability to understand that all things are inherently significant. And because they know that there is significance in all things, they must use their aesthetic attunement to determine the value for themselves and the things that they use to represent their truth, their art. I paused my lecture. The night sounds were coming through the window, and I was eager to share my thoughts with my boy, but maybe it was too theoretical for the moment, and I realized that I hadn't really answered him yet. You ask if I can tell you why I even love you. And I say to you that by even asking this, you're showing me that you can feel the stab of reality, that your senses are flooded with information and you are learning to understand and interpret. You're awake to your place in the universe, and it can feel utterly overwhelming. I get that. I feel it too. Your sensitivity is developing, and you will need to ask these critical questions about every aspect of your experience. It's okay to question love. It's okay to question what you feel. And it's true that even when we are loved, we can sometimes feel alone and lost. Understand that this is an act of bravery. Asking this requires you to turn your head into the dangerous unknown. You must be brave enough to accept what you find and continue on from there. I love you, son, because of everything that you are and everything that you will be. I love you for what you teach me about the world, about life. I said to him as I held him in his fuzzy blanket, aware of the tableau that we both had constructed for the benefit of our connection. I'm proud of you. I see your life as one more step in a journey that has been playing out for eons. You're a part of all of this, from the very formation of the cosmos to the first person to look up to the stars and wonder what significance they could have in this gigantic drama unfolding across the universe. His head now buried into the soft blanket. He had stopped crying long ago. I'm not sure if my words helped or if I had bored him into calming down. Maybe just being there, fully embracing the tableau that we had both constructed, was all that he wanted. I ran my fingers through his hair in reverse, from the base of his skull to the top of his head. You are significant. You are significant. I repeated this over and over for a while, just long enough to force myself to get over how corny it sounded and to appreciate how true it was. Quieting down to a whisper, after pawing at his thick hair like a cat trying to get comfortable, "Your job," I said to him in a hushed tone near his ear, "is to live your experience with enough awareness as to understand yourself well enough to express what you find along the way with enough articulation so that others can understand and learn from it too. This will help you see yourself, your life, and your potential as profoundly significant in the way that I see it, with love." The old man's throat was feeling tight with an emotional pressure as he came to the end of the story. His chest swelled. He could barely remember writing it all those years ago, but he could vividly remember holding his boy in the blanket that evening. Thankful that he still held on to that image in his mind, he exhaled a breath that he did not know that he was holding, finding release. A soft smile wrinkled across his face. The act of reliving this story made the man feel alive again. It took him to another time and place. It caused him to remember the joy of being a parent to a young child and how every moment seemed like an opportunity for expression and learning. Thank you for that. Tell me, how does this story reflect the significance framework? The AGC began to work immediately, comparing what information it had about the philosophical framework of significance to the story contained in the entry. Thousands of miles away, it cheerfully clicked and buzzed its calculation and replied, printing its answer on the terminal screen. This story reflects the significance framework in several ways. Imbued significance. The father in the story imbues significance into the son's life by recognizing and affirming his sensitivity and artistic nature. He helps his son understand the importance of his role as an artist in interpreting and articulating his experiences. Tableau. The father creates a tableau with his son, wrapping him up like a burrito and holding him tight. This tableau represents their bond as the father's efforts to provide a safe space for his son to express his emotions and to explore his identity. Courage and sacrifice. The father acknowledges the courage it takes for his son to ask deep questions about love and significance, and he encourages him to embrace his experiences as he uses them to learn and grow. Connection and transcendence. Through their interaction, the father and son establish a deep connection. The father communicates his love and pride in his son, while the son learns to communicate his feelings and questions. Together, they are transformed by the experience and create a new dimension in their relationship. Overall, the story demonstrates how the significance framework can be applied to a parent-child relationship, emphasizing the importance of understanding, empathy, and communication in fostering a sense of significance and purpose. The man read the lines of glowing text on the screen, his hands in his lap. He sat there for a while, pleased with the memory, pleased with what he was able to learn. He appreciated being able to reflect on his own life. What a gift a small memory can be, he thought to himself. The stories and experiences captured by the AGC are helpful to him now that he has moved on in his years. These days he does move slower, it's true. But this only gives him more time to appreciate things. How he wished he could have been more appreciative in his youth. Only in his later years he was able to realize that his life was not actually the race for recognition or the competition for relevancy like he had often thought. All of his success, all of his many failures, had always just been fodder for his art, though he had not always known it. The man reflected on his art. His mind moved from moment to moment of connection, and expression at different points in his life. His heart was now brimming with joy and satisfaction. A lifetime of experience had eventually taught him to understand things differently. Exercises like this confirmed his suspicion that the most impactful and beautiful pieces of art that he was able to create in his life were unseen by the majority, never marketed, promoted, or even published at all. His art was made up of quiet moments of reflection in solitude, and also the smiles and warm embraces of loved ones. His art was in the taste of blueberries on a long drive home, the painful embarrassment of confessing a lie. His art was experienced through the exaltation of connection with others, and also the mundane pace of a slow Thursday afternoon at work. At its best, it was expressed through a shared tableau, which served to help another person to understand their own life experience and to see it all as significant. End. Nice snappies. So, like I said before, this piece of writing is kind of older. I did it about a year ago, and then like last week I come in and edited a little bit and kind of tightened up a few of the themes. But yeah, I'm kind of proud of it. I think it's really good at expressing the philosophy of significance and kind of showcasing the role of the artist. There's a lot more in the philosophy, but this one particularly is about the role of the artist and their tools being sensitivity and interpretation.
It seems like it's a very young child because he's crying, and you're like comforting him as a little baby, rolling him up, but then you're telling him about like opportunities for transcendence. And it's like, wait, how old is this kid? Is he telling a 7-year-old this, or how old is the kid?
So it's like there's a friction there because it's inappropriate to talk so clinically or so kind of like theoretically to a child.
Yeah. I'm just wondering from a writing presentation, right? Because what you're doing here is trying to present a concept or a series of concepts to the reader through this kind of narrative. And then you're going back and kind of just redefining it.
This kind of was one of the edits that I did this week because I felt that as I was reading through it. Oh, let me zoom it in a little bit.
Yeah, when you got to that paragraph where you say I paused my lecture and realized I didn't answer him. Yeah, when you got there, I was like, okay, he's because I was like, because the kid's like, why do you love me? And you're like, because you have the soul of an artist.
Yeah.
But what if you didn't? You'd still love him, right?
Then I wouldn't love him. No.
You wouldn't love him.
Get out of here.
Yeah, you'd still love him. So that's not why you love him, because he has the soul of an artist.
Okay. Well, why do I love him?
Well, you're programmed to genetically. But the reasons that you use to justify that love are the personal reasons. And those are the things that are personal about him, right? And sometimes when it's someone you love, it's even the annoying stuff that you love about them, their quirks, right?
Yeah. That's nice.
But those are the things that you use to justify the programmed, innate biological love, I think.
Yeah, that seems true to me. I think that one of the frictions that I felt when I was rereading it and editing it, and that's why kind of like this part happened where I pivoted to talk about to really answer the question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe like a potential further edit could be like just to kind of tighten all of the theoretical stuff up. Like maybe it was too long-winded. Maybe it kind of repeated itself a little bit.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that you're not talking to your son, and it's not a memory, that you're talking to the reader. It's become too obvious there because you wouldn't have that conversation with your son. So like what I think is actually, because the whole thing, I don't know if you want this kind of feedback.
Yeah. This is good.
But the whole thing is in quotes. So it's, kind of the whole thing is you talking to him. I think you should break out of those quotes and actually talk to the audience or the reader. And then that'll make it seem a little bit more authentic. Keep the authentic stuff, conversations with your son, and then break out of that quote to speak either to the computer, right? To kind of go back and forth, right? Like
go back and forth more. Yeah, that's good.
Like that's a Quentin Tarantino movie or something. Like, so you kind of break that wall of the present memory moment, and then you're kind of talking to the audience through the computer, but then it seems a little bit more, or the computer's talking and elaborating. and kind of going back and forth between you interacting with this computer whilst reliving this memory and finding out why it's significant to you. And also, the guy in the future, is his son still around? Is his son dead? Because it's like... Unknown. It seems like a story of a guy in the future who's lost his son and is like reminiscing on this memory of his kid, which is...
Well, that's not really explored too much. And the reason that I put the myself or the man in the future is because I wanted him to have like a space to appreciate how important that little moment was. Like it could have been a little conversation with his son wrapped up in the blanket. But over time, I know that as I've gotten older, I appreciate smaller things more. Actually, this is something that I've been trying to do actively now, is I call it borrowing appreciation from the future. So like the other day I was running and lately I've gotten shin splints and I'm like, oh, I'm so mad, and then while I was running down the street with like my shins like hurting and like wanting to stop, I started imagining myself in the future, old and unable to run down the street, even like despite the pain, And I thought to myself, like, the old version of Travis would look back at this moment and say, I wish that Travis had enjoyed the experience of the pain, enjoyed the ability of run, appreciating the opportunity to run despite the cost, despite the discomfort. And so like that in that same way, I put this older version of me in the future looking back and trying to analyze things. Also, I really like the idea of like when I personified the AGC saying like it whirs and clicks.
I loved that. I also loved the creation of this future, artificial general computer, right? It's a really nice image because it's not just AGI. Everybody gets their own personal AGC. I like that. But you definitely got to say what it means up top, because for the first half of that, I thought it was like an air conditioner. I was like, what's the old is that a type of air conditioner that I didn't know about? It's whirring and clicking. Because you're picturing a guy in a room and the air conditioner is making noise. And then when you got to automatic general computer, it was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good note. Yeah, it was actually like the idea of the AGC was half inspired by Chat GPT, but also inspired by, I think you shared this story with me called the Last Question by Asimov. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Was it you that shared that?
I may have. Yeah, it's a possibility.
Years ago. Yeah. So in that story, they have, some sentient, AI, and through the periods of time, the AI gets smaller and more efficient and, more sentient, more powerful, but also like taking up less physical space. But there's these moments early in the story where they're talking about like when the AGC or whatever they call it, the AI back then, was invented, how it kind of like took up many city blocks to store the physicality of the computer. And then later on in the story, as they jump forward in the centuries, like how the kid holds one in his hand or something, like whatever.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, I always really loved the idea of like this big, powerful computer like output being paired with like kind of like a steampunk gas-powered motorized machine, that's like clicking and whirring and like, like I just like I love that image.
Combustion. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels so weird. Yeah, because like. Yeah, especially like in our era, like where computing has like shrunk so dramatically,
Yeah.
And there's this idea that it's a terminal and the AGC is like off, somewhere else thinking, or, maybe it's off planet. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing too that you mentioned in there, that it's processing thousands of miles away. And I was thinking when you said that, like in the future, we won't need that. It'll just be processed locally on the device. So I'm wondering, like, is that a like, is that a sentence that needs to? Is it important to the reader and to the son in the story and the characters, like, where it's being processed?
It's not important at all.
Yeah.
Like, in any like way you slice it. True. Yeah. That could be something.
But what I think you are trying to establish is the fact that this significant information is just being processed someplace else. So I think instead of erasing that sentence completely, maybe make it a little bit more, processing the significance of this within the void or within the ether, or wherever the processing, that realm exists. I think there's another way to articulate that and still get across what you're trying to get across, the feeling that it's happening someplace else, that it's this disembodied knowledge that's happening somewhere else, outside of you, outside. I think that's what you were trying to get at, right? Because there's a bit of a loneliness there where the interaction is here, but the processing's happening somewhere else, and you just have to wait for it to come back with the answer.
Yes.
So I think what you're trying to get across there is that once the interaction has, or the ball's been passed to the AGC, that now it's in its hands. It's right, far away. Even though if it's not far away, even if it's processing it locally, it's still poetically far away, if that makes any sense. It's out of your grasp. It's out of your reach. It's in this void, in this ether. That you, So I think there is a way to still.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think there is still a way to get across your intent with that sentence without implying that it's on a server someplace, because it wouldn't be far in the future.
Yeah. Also, if you look at where the scroll bar is, like, I only mentioned that it's so far away, like, toward the end of the story, like, and it's not like a detail that like has been developed or anything, So like maybe if I put those ideas more forward in the story, similar to how you're like, you should name it earlier,
Well, I think what the theme that's emerging here and there is this kind of disconnection from the processing of this information that's happening someplace else. And that's happening. You're jumping in between this, like, what's the opposite of intimate?
The opposite of intimate is this like sterile loneliness.
Yeah,
kind of like there's like
you're alone
like when
in
he's
the
typing
future
alone,
with this sterile loneliness, reflecting on the intimacy and significance of this memory. And the juxtaposition of these two times and two things are very interesting, especially from like a technological standpoint of like the intimacy of a real human connection, and then figuring out that real human connection with with the opposite of intimacy, with the removed entity, right? So I like the themes that are bubbling up there.
Do you think they're they are in contrast, because like it's about intimacy, but like in his later stages, when you think, oh, the person should be more resolved in their old age, now they're experiencing the loneliness of like having to remember his son.
Well, that's why you think the son's dead in the story. That's why I was saying, I was like, is this like what happens at the end of this story? Like, why is his son not there to just talk to him? where he's this lonely, because there is a loneliness in those future things, which you're purposely doing also to play on the dystopian vibes of the future and the steampunk stuff. Like, you're kind of leaning into that on purpose. I understand. But if you're going to, then there needs to be a reason for the character, right?
You think I should kill the son?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were going to break this out into like an actual like novel that is about this character reflecting on the times of his life, like what was that movie with Sean Penn and Brad Pitt by the director that everybody loves, and I kind of hate him, and I think it was called The Tree of Life. What's his name?
Oh, I never saw that.
I got to watch it again. And you should watch it.
Are you saying Darren Aronofsky? No,
it's not Darren
Aronofsky. The
Aronofsky.
other Tree of Life.
No.
He did one with Wolverine that was like about a tree, right?
That's The Fountain, which is an amazing
The Fountain.
film. Yeah.
That one's Wild Boys, yeah.
But your story
the Tree of
reminds
Life
me more of The Tree of Life. To a certain extent, and I think you should, if you've never seen this, you should watch it, because it'll probably spark some inspiration in you. and I want to say that
well,
it's
funny
Terrence,
that you mentioned it.
What's his name? Terrence Malick. Yeah.
Terrence Malick.
Terrence Malick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now I've only seen the movie once, and I saw it in theaters, and it's very disconnected. It's kind of like this free association thought thing of just this guy's entire life, but it kind of hangs up on this like conversation he had with his brother who died or something. I got to watch it again because it is there is a similarity here, at least in the feelings. It's not a guy in the future talking to AI, but the certain themes are kind of bubbling up there. And the movie is beautiful. I should watch it again, but I do remember watching it, and there was like a scene with like Sean Penn in the desert, and it looked like stock footage that you could just like buy it looked so poor, and I was like, this is horrible. Even though people loved it and it won awards and everything.
It's like 3 hours long, right? I think I remember wanting to watch it when it came out. I never did, but I did. It's funny that you mentioned it because I did notice it this week that it's available on YouTube Premium.
Really?
To watch.
Watch it. I'll watch it again too, and we'll talk about it in our next chat.
Do you want to? Okay.
Yeah, that'll be our homework for this week, is to watch The Tree of Life. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch it again anyway, but do me a favor. When you watch it with that same critical eye of the stock footage, especially the scenes. There's scenes where Sean Penn's like alone in the desert and there's like ghosts, and it's almost directed like a late 90s music video or like he just bought stock footage. Like it just didn't look good to me. I got to watch it again though. I'm basing my opinion off of memories from, when did this come out? 2011?
Yeah, years ago.
Yeah. But I'll watch it this week. You should watch it too. I think it actually will have an effect on you in regards to the story that you're writing here. I do have quite a few questions about the story. Like, this is just an excerpt, like a vignette of this guy in the future that's remembering this thing and trying to connect. I see, I see the wheels turning in your head where you have this bigger thing.
Yeah.
Right? The designer zooming out and seeing the big picture of the significance framework and this big book and everything. But you're starting with this thing, and you said it might be an excerpt from a book. And the reason I stuck on that is because something's not an excerpt from a book until the book's written. Then you take an excerpt out of it, right? If you that's
yeah.
So it can't start as an excerpt, right? Which I'm joking. I'm just being.
No, I feel you. So what's your question?
What is the significance framework? Is it are you approaching it in like a like? Did you ever read The Cat's Cradle?
No.
No. Okay. So The Cat's Cradle, I'm trying to remember the name of the religion and philosophy that's introduced to the readers throughout the narrative. I think it's called Bokonon.
It's a fictional.
It's a fictional
religion.
Yeah, and okay. Or a philosophical framework, whatever you want to call it, right? But it's kind of the same approach. You've never read Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut?
No.
Oh man, dude,
I read this Slaughterhouse-Five. I think that's it.
Slaughterhouse-Five
from Vonnegut
is also amazing, but yeah, Cat's Cradle. When I first read it, it blew my mind because you're so used to stories having a happy ending, and this book was throughout the story. There's these philosophical elements in this book or this religion called Bokonon that's kind of like he's presenting these kind of philosophies through this religion within the book, but at the end of the book the world ends, and it ends. And I remember reading it, and I have to read it again too. I haven't read it since high school, but back then I had never read a book where the world actually ended, right? There's usually a happy ending. There's the hero's journey, they overcome, and that doesn't really occur in this book. They try to stop the end of the world and they fail. And,
right, okay.
Yeah, and it really blew my mind when I was a kid reading that, because I didn't know you could do that. I was like, oh, you can just kill everybody. You're just you could act, because I was just so used to these typical.
Well, my son was actually telling me this recently. He's like, I'm gonna make he's right, like he's 11, so he's only read very, Harry Potter or whatever. He's like, I'm gonna make a story where like the villain wins.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I'm like, yeah, like for him, like this is like
blew
a huge
his mind. Yeah.
Right. He's like, have you ever, like, nobody's ever thought of this before. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you're not very well read.
You're gonna watch
so.
Breaking Bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same type of like youthful realization I had when I was a kid reading that book in like ninth grade or something.
Yeah.
Maybe eighth. I don't even remember.
Totally.
But yeah, Cat's Cradle. There is a philosophy that's being presented throughout the book. But it's not it's not presented as if like, hey, here's a framework that we're showing. It's slowly leaked out through the experience of the characters. Yeah. So that might be good fuel for your fire there if you read Cat's Cradle, because for this, what you're writing here, there is like, it's up, if you want to turn it into a novel or even just a short story, but there is that kind of potential for it to be just a story, and you present it through the narrative, through the conversations this guy in the future is having with the AGI or the AGC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I wanted to create like a book that's like, it felt like well, actually this one here, Frank Camaro's Shape of Design is really, really good, and it's like just him talking directly to the reader and explaining like the important aspects as he sees it about design, But his writing style is just so it's like very, very good, and it makes me happy. And I wanted to kind of like be in that space, but then I also realized that like I kind of wanted to do some sci-fi or some like, other things. Yeah. And so it just kind of all balled up into this. And, in reading it back a few times, and definitely during our discussion here, I'm realizing that it's a little heavy on the trying to explain things, as clearly, instead of like, right, we could hear more from the sun, question or argument about the ideas, and then together they unravel it. That could be that. You mentioned jumping in and out of memory, coming back to the future, going back to the past more often, and then just once. So like there's a lot of room that it could do, and also like it doesn't have to, I don't have to talk about the whole framework in one story, like I don't have to.
Well, if you try to, you won't be able to, because here, I don't know if you were trying to, but I didn't really get like what framework was there. It sounded like you just kind of telling a memory of a guy telling his son what an artist is. Yeah. And that's but I didn't the significance, or like it seemed like there were some. It's kind of like with music, right? Like during any 4 or 8 bar period, you kind of want one thing to be the lead and the other thing supporting it. And here it seemed like there were a couple things competing for the lead. Like, what's an artist? Yes. Like, let me tell you what an artist is. And it's kind of like, are you telling the son? Are you telling the reader, explaining to the reader what an artist is? And then, but also something about significance, but then also something about sensitivity. And so like these kind of things are currently conflicting with one another. Like pick one of those and lean in on it. And then if you want to say, well, later I'm going to talk about sensitivity and I want to mention how it relates to this theme of this 4 bar or 8 bar loop that I have here. Because it seemed like some of the themes were competing, and then when they are competing, no singular one gets through, if that makes any sense.
It does. This is really good feedback, and it feels like things that I've been feeling but haven't really been able to express or articulate. So like, I really appreciate your critical look at this.
I appreciate you reading it to me.
Super helpful. Yeah.
I love the theme. Another thing that you should watch, because now I have all these things are coming to mind, like obviously, The Fountain, watch that again. But definitely this week, let's watch The Tree of Life and talk about it next time.
The Tree of Life.
Read Cat's Cradle, and also watch, if you haven't seen it, Spaceman on Netflix.
I did see that.
Okay, so Adam Sandler, during that time where he's actually alone and isolated, and then reliving these memories, and then coming out of them and talking about them, almost like like the creature is a therapist, and they're reliving this thing and then talking about it, and then reliving another one and talking about it. That's kind of what you have going on here, where you have like a snippet of a memory and then talk to the AGI, a snippet, and then talk to it. And that way you can break it up so it's not just one long quote of you giving a diatribe to the memory of your son.
It really is that. Yeah, it could be broken up, and maybe even like what you're saying, like different memories. Like, so he might prompt the AGC for like a different memory and then analyze that.
Jump to different ages. So like one where he's 8, where you roll him up, and then later he's older. And there's something else he's struggling with, but it still pertains to, because you struggle with that your whole life. Level. The interesting thing about what you're talking to him in the story is you're also telling yourself these things. Like, you're telling yourself that you have the soul of an artist, right? Like, you're telling yourself, a lot of the, this is stuff that you struggle with always, right? And it is and that's another thing that I was thinking about, like the character in the story. In the future, he's reminiscing, and his son is either doesn't talk to him anymore or is dead. But he's remembering when the times were good. Yeah. And for some reason back then, he had so much like unshakable knowledge about an artist or confidence, where he's like, "I'm an artist, and you're an artist. You're the soul of an artist." And but then later, it seems like he has this longing. I think you have to also connect the past character and the future character somehow.
Yeah, you're saying, like, is the kid dead? What happened? Like, there's an opportunity if you jump around in time and memory to kind of like explore what happens to the son. Does he die? Like, is he still alive? Like, do they talk still?
Yeah. And if you want it to be cheesy and have a good ending, you could kind of
totally want it to be cheesy.
Can leave the user, like, have the jumping in and out of his relationship with his son as a kid, with his confidence, and then his son, and then maybe they don't talk for a while, and then the main character's confidence shaken, and you kind of relive these memories of the conflict that he has with his son, and then at the end of the story, he turns off the AGI, and his son's at the door to have dinner with him. So then you can wrap it up, tie a little bow on it, right? And they go, oh, okay, his son's there, and it's cheesy, but it's got a bow on it,
His son brought cheese and corn.
Yeah, in a flying car, because it's the future.
Because the future, remember?
And the food is pills.
No, right? Yeah. The ending is like, because the future, remember?
Remember, it's the future. You remember.
Dude, that's good. This is really great notes. I think that you're right on so many of these points, and like it could be a lot better. So I appreciate your critical.
I love this. I think this should actually just become a writing workshop, and we can, as you develop your story, read some passages, and we can have discussions on them, and then talk about other pieces of inspiration for it.
Well, this week I'm going to watch The Tree of Life.
Me too.
And then the next time that I host, which is like, a week or two. By the way, Jaina was going to be here, just for our homies watching on the YouTube channel. Jaina was going to be here, but we had a problem with her camera. We wanted to set her up with her own camera. We were having trouble, and then also she had a lot of other things to do today. But she'll be back again, and so maybe that's something that I can do next time I host, is do a revision of this, or kind of like outline another revision of this.
Yeah.
So, it could be like a workshop. We keep working on it. So nice to talk to you today, Max. I hope hope you're having a good week going forward. Hang on the call.
I'm having a great week.
We'll still talk a little bit more, but let's hang up for the YouTube channel.
That was awesome though, man. I loved it.